So he said I do the World Bitcoin Network. It's another one of those big names. I think there's a lot of people who work in Bitcoin who kind of working alone, lead their sad lives, start a company with a big name, and kind of just do their own thing. So I put out my little videos online, and I didn't get asked to speak until Monday, which was my wife's birthday. So I immediately said yes. I was very excited. Never done this sort of thing before. But I want to take advantage of this chance because rarely do I get a live crowd. I've been doing a couple videos, mostly technical, so I'm not going to talk about the Merkle tree or the Merkle root. I'm not going to talk about paper wallets, but I did a recent one on the Bitcoin revolution. So to get started, that's me in Africa. And right next to me is an elephant poop. They call it the Côte d'Elephant. And if you notice behind me is my car. After 1 week of being where I was, which was all alone in this rainforest, that was as far as I had walked from the car. I was really scared. The first night, I was sitting at home and I was all alone. So the job requirement that I had was speak French, speak English to visiting professors and all that. And I had to be able to sit alone in a national park with nobody else but me and the animals. There was no fence between my house and anything there. And the first night, it's raining, and it's raining really hard. And I had to pee. And I was so scared to walk out to pee that I actually cracked the door open. And I'm really ashamed of this, but it's actually an amazing moment. And I peed through the little crack in the door into the pitch darkness. And the next morning when I wake up, there's leopard prints outside my door. Must have come there early in the hot sun. It rains at night, bakes during the day. The elephant had broken into the outhouse, and elephants eat soap. Most people don't know that. Wasps eat soap too. So I kind of justified my fears. So for another week, I kept peeing at night through cracks and doorways into the pitch darkness. Crazy noises from the forest. I was terrified. During the day, Joe Dell, who came from the village, started to acclimate me to the forest. And Joe Dell greets me in French and walks me into the forest like this. To get the job, I had to have some wildlife experience. I'd worked in Brazil. I'd worked in Peru. I worked in Bolivia in a great wildlife reserve called Inti Guarayasi. In Brazil, you can walk through the forest with your headphones in, barefooted. Nothing kills you in the forest in Brazil. In Africa, everything kills you. So the forest buffalo kill dozens of locals every year. They're right there in the forest, the dense forest. The leopard, the python, the gorilla, chimpanzee maybe, but the insects will kill you as well. So the mosquito, the Plasmodium falciparsum, is the most deadly malaria bacteria in the world, kills you in Africa. It doesn't kill you in Brazil. Ebola is also from Gabon, where I was. So after a week, I got to this point where here I am standing over an elephant poop, and that same day, I was told that the woman I replaced, it's a British woman, had been impaled by elephant tusks. One of the tusks went right up into her rib cage, another caught her above her chest, and was thrown over the elephant's head. This, of course, didn't help me at night when I had to pee. So I was there for a couple months before I actually walked down the steps and started to be able to pee into the grass. The outhouse was still about 20 meters away. I came to Gabon because I was bored out of my mind. I was sad. I was alone. I was completely just terrifying, just boredom in the United States. The Clash have a song, "I'm so bored in the USA." And this boredom was consuming me, and something happened when I was in Gabon, and I took this job because I didn't even know the name. So I got this job invite. And I was like, oh, the job looks okay. Gabon, what town is that? So I looked it up on the map, and it's a full country right there in Western Africa. So I punished myself and decided to go to Gabon. I get off the train, 6 hours, straight through right along the equator, green everywhere, trees everywhere. You can't talk to someone from Gabon about deforestation. They don't know what that means. So Jadel's walking me through the forest, and he tells me what to do if you see a gorilla. Does anyone know what to do if you see a gorilla? Gorilla charging you? Does anyone know? I don't know if I would ever, I never saw a gorilla. They were everywhere, but I didn't see one. I don't know if I'd be able to do it. If a gorilla, male gorilla charges you, and this is the only thing that really works, you have to bow your head. And there's something about that they'll stop. Heart racing hearing this. If a buffalo charges you have to jump out of the way. If an elephant charges you, you run like crazy. They're a little bit nearsighted. If a python gets you, does anyone know what to do if a python gets you? Just make sure you don't fall down, because if you fall down, they get you. Everything was terrifying me. And slowly, while I was there, though, I started to realize I was no longer in this funk, this great depression that I had. And I met a woman, and we ended up having a child. He was born in Kenya. And my wife's Ugandan. Beautiful, beautiful woman. After a year or so, we decided, well, she kind of decided, that we were going to come back to the United States. And I was afraid. I was afraid of that massive, sort of powerful, just, I can't do anything here. This isn't for me. I don't want to go back to work. I graduated electrical engineering, did work for NASA, did research for companies, and I just hated my life. I came back, and after about 6 months, the same thing was happening. I realized I was just completely sad, and I was just completely bored in this country again. And then I saw this little thing. Someone had written something about Bitcoin. And, you know, I'm usually kind of the curious type. I'll read about it. But I saw that someone, it was right after the big crash, right? So in April something, price spiked, dropped down to $100. It's kind of holding at $100. And I was reading about some guy in Boston who had lost some money. And I was curious about him, and then he's like, I just woke up one morning, I got really excited about Bitcoin, I just bought in. It just sounded weird. Something about all that sounded weird. This Bitcoin thing was sticking in my head. Like most people come to Bitcoin with some sort of logic. I came to it with just, I was in a funk, I missed Africa, and here's this weird Bitcoin thing, and some guy bought in. Why does that bother me? Go to bed at night. He just bought in. It bothers me. Why? I'm tossing. Next morning I wake up, like most people, when you start to catch some sort of Bitcoin bug, you start reading all you can. But I wasn't reading about the blockchain, Merkle roots, how to do all this, you know, multi-sigs and all that. I was reading these stories of people who were buying in, and something was confusing me, and it didn't make sense. So I said, well, how did he buy in? Clicked around. He bought in through Coinbase. Clicked on Coinbase. Hello, buy Bitcoin. I'm like, God, I've been away from the United States for a long time. What do you mean you just buy in? So I clicked through, added my bank account, bought 4 Bitcoins, $79. I was like, I own Bitcoin now? Wait, I mean, I did add my bank account, but I own Bitcoin? What's wrong with this? And there was something about owning Bitcoin, about physically, something about owning Bitcoin that freaked me out. The next night, I sort of stayed awake. I was like, I own Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? No idea what I own. I own Bitcoin. I am somebody. I own Bitcoin. Right? So I started reading more and more about Bitcoin. I own Bitcoin. So I bought some more. The price was dropping when I bought it. It's typical of my life. You know, you buy something, it just goes, pew, buy again, pew. Went down to like the 60s. Actually, went down to the 50s. I didn't buy it in the 50s. So I bought like 2 in the 60s. And I tell my brother, I'm like, you know what my newest obsession is? He's like, what? He's like, Bitcoin. I told him Bitcoin. He's like, what do you know about it? I'm like, I don't know. So he pops open the Wikipedia page. And he reads to me about Bitcoin. I own it. But something was driving me crazy. I was just staying up like other people were buying Bitcoin. I was reading about other people buying Bitcoin. Something was really strange about this thing. Now, I'm going to be 50 this year, November 12th. And I can talk like most people. I remember the internet beginning. I remember Facebook taking off. And I wish I could tell you that I was that bright. Oh, Facebook, I wish I could invest. Blah. But I just always knew that I couldn't buy in. There was something that you couldn't do, right? Peter Thiel gets to be the hero once again, right? He gets to buy in. Now, most of you might start to realize what I'm getting at is that I wasn't excited about this thing as a currency. I wasn't excited about, I could even send money to Africa, which I started doing in June. I sent money to my brother-in-law. He's 17. Sent him $30 of Bitcoin, thinking maybe in December he'll be able to redeem it. He redeemed it in 10 minutes. There's a documentary team out there right now, and he's telling a story. He gets the Bitcoins on his wallet. He goes out to the bus station. Anybody here know anything about this thing, Bitcoin? Dude, if you have Bitcoin, I'm buying it right now. He looks at him, he's like, all right, how much are you going to give me for that? He didn't even know the price. The guy gave him rate. He calls me back in 10 minutes. Boom, I got it. I'm like, what do you mean you got it? That's 10 minutes. I just went out, guy bought Bitcoin. I started to go crazy. What is this thing? He was able to buy food. I'd been sending money through Western Union, 12% fees all the time. And you really start sending your cousin or the 17-year-old, start sending them $400 because you save money by sending more. You don't really want to send them $400. You really want to send them $2, right? I need sandals. I need new glasses. Here's $4. So I sent him some more money. He goes to the bus station, gets rate again. I'm like, this thing is the weirdest thing I've ever seen, right? So I started to talk to some friends of mine, and I started to get concerned about something that was formed in 1934. And it was formed because of basically the world got goxed, right? You had the big stock market crash, and everyone got goxed. The whole country got goxed. And so to protect us individuals, and my friend here knows all about this, they started to add regulations. They started to add this thing called the SEC. And the SEC says, if you want to get equity in a company, you have to be a vetted investor. And I just bought Bitcoin. I guess it's not equity in a company. What the hell is this thing? So I tried to find the CEO of Bitcoin. There was no CEO. I was trying to find the person who invented Bitcoin. There's no guy who invented it. Well, of course, and my heart's bleeding today because there's so much emotion about Satoshi Nakamoto. But the thing that I love about Bitcoin isn't spoken about very much. When you see Tony talking in the last piece, right? He's trying to bring you home. He's trying to make you feel comfortable with Bitcoin. How do you get people feel comfortable to get in? What I loved about Africa was that it was allowing me to risk my life and body and enjoy fear. I actually like fear. I mean, there's people who surf, right? So you know they like fear. They'll go, people who jump off of cliffs and do all this stuff. I don't really like that stuff. I got a bad knee. I'm getting old. I don't really love that stuff, but I understand it. Going down the mountain 300 miles an hour, right? You're in the, jumping off something like 500 miles high. People like fear. And if someone comes in and takes away my right to fear, I start to feel that, right? So if I'm in the United States, you really don't have a right to fear anymore. You really don't have a right to just be completely afraid. They're going to come in and help you. Somebody's going to complain, oh, I was a little afraid. I sent some money to somebody, and then I lost my money. We should have a law against that. Democracy gets hacked by these people, right? I don't think it's the majority of people who are complaining when the stock market crashed. I think a lot of them were like, yo, I had a great time, right? If Bitcoin went up to $10 billion tomorrow, I wouldn't sell because I would miss the fear. I was living in Africa. I was getting paid diddly, but it was so much better than the jobs I used to have. This was a job where fear was incorporated. I had to pee through the door like this. I wasn't sitting at home going, gee, I wonder what I'm going to do tomorrow. My old girlfriend, I miss her. I don't know what I'm going to do with my finances. I was afraid. That was replacing every thought of my day. Now let's take this a little further because now it gets interesting, and I hope if you raise your hand and you want to help out when we start to move on this, because I think this next part of this might be kind of fun, and maybe I'll do a video on it. The Wright brothers were in South Carolina, I think, and they go to Kitty Hawk, and they basically cobble some wood together with basically what's a lawnmower motor, right? And they're running down the sand, and this thing takes off a little bit. They hop on, and then it crashes, and then they have to go back home. Nobody at that point's offering any regulation. No one's saying, well, you've just entered into government fly space. I need your regulations for that. At that point, there are no regulations, right? The only thing you're really concerned about is taking off. That's the only thing they had to think about in those first years. In the early 1900s, they had to be able to take off. And I'll bet you they were having fun, right? They were getting afraid. They were climbing on that plane. They're like, they were high school. They dropped out of high school, right? The formulas of aerodynamics and all that are still used, these high school dropouts, right? If they weren't, some of them were younger than 16 when you can legally drop out. Mark Twain, by the way, never went to school. Abraham Lincoln never went to school. You can go down the list of all the people who've left school. Mark Twain wanted to be afraid. He went down the Mississippi River, right? So the Wright brothers are cobbling this thing together, and the only thing they're worried about is flight. No one really cares if you've got landing gear, right? If you've got all the security precautions set in. Oh, I'm really afraid you might hurt yourself. Do you know how many people in the next few years died on flying machines? There's no regulation. They would volunteer. As soon as one died, someone else would walk up. I want to fly that. I'll do an aerial show. I'll do the spin arounds, right? They didn't have advanced landing gear. They didn't have seat belts. The early cars, you think they had anti-lock brakes, rear view mirrors? No. The point of new technology is to take off, right? So if you regulate something before you're allowed to take off, there's no fun in it. And I like fun. I like owning my Bitcoins. I love when the price goes up and down. I'm like, woo, let's go. Whoa, damn. Woo, let's go, So there's a right to fear that gets, so you've probably been to Niagara Falls. I'm going to hammer this point home, right? You go to Niagara Falls, there's the fall. You walk right up like this, and some guy's like, hey, buddy, stand back. For your own security, for your own protection, you can't get anywhere near that water. Like, what are you talking about? I want to jump in, right? Nope, national security, right? Blah. Sir, please stand back, sir. Like, what? If you have regulation that controls your ability to have fun, if it controls your ability to do something, and if it controls your ability to innovate, There's some problems with that. I guarantee you no one was coming in to the Wright brothers and going, you know, we need to look at this. Someone could take that plane and they could bring some products over there, or they could move these products over here. Everything that Bitcoin does can be done by a car. Cars kill 1.2 million people a year, okay? So it's just really, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going after this. But I hope you get my point. If the SEC, though, if the SEC was able last year or 2 years ago to control Bitcoin in any way, do you think we'd have an Andreas Antonopoulos? I mean, the guy's awesome, right? No, we'd get Peter Thiel again. Do you think if the SEC was able to come in, we'd have a Tony Galippi? No. We'd get Microsoft again. They're the only ones legally. If I ran up to Zuckerberg, and I actually was one of the bright ones who thought about this, if I ran up to him at Harvard and was like, hey, dude, here's 20 bucks. I really love your idea. Be like, I can't accept money from you. I have to use 100 vetted investors, and they've all got to have an X amount of cash. Otherwise, I'm going to go out of business. He really would. He has basically got his hand tied behind his back, and I can't invest. Little people can't invest. We can't. The SEC is basically saying, we don't trust you little people with your money. Why doesn't anyone talk about the SEC? It's just a crock. It's an absolute crock. They're stopping me from investing. I've never done anything foolish, really, with my money outside of going and standing over elephant poop. So that's really all I got to say. It is a freedom. There's much more. I do a video, which I'm very proud of, about the free market of transparency that will revolutionize Bitcoin in one way. We'll see a separation of bank and state that Bitcoin might create. But just the freedom to be afraid needs to be protected more often. I like being afraid. I need fear. So standing up here for the first time, you know, I taught high school 20 years ago, is fun. So that's it. Back to my MC.
All right. If anybody has... Okay.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions, we're taking any. Anyone? All right.
Where can we find more of your work?
Thank you very much. It's very kind. I do a thing called World Bitcoin Network. And mostly they're fairly technical, and I intend to do a lot more programming stuff, so Python stuff. I just did one on Merkle roots, Merkle trees. But every so often, I buy myself. It's actually much harder to do, but I did. If you look at the one on transparency that I just did, I mean, that's some jaw-dropping stuff. But I want to do one on fear, and so I'm kind of practicing here. But the revolution of Bitcoin isn't 3% off on your credit cards, right? It's not, you keep hearing it's the other people on earth. No, it's happening here. It really is. It's changing our life. It's allowing me to be afraid, but it's allowing us to innovate. It's allowing our sad selves to jump. I met a chemical engineer last year. I was so sick of being a chemical engineer. I gave up everything, and now I'm into Bitcoin. Awesome. That's the best success story. That's a revolution for me, right? The fact that there's a brain trust, you guys have been around here, the brain trust is phenomenal. The revolution is going to be here, and it's going to change. What is a revolution? Aristotle said a revolution is when you actually change a constitution. This is before they even had constitutions, but he said it's when you change a constitution. When you look at the Bill of Rights, it's a small sect of freedoms that we're really given, and they're important ones. Adding to it, you know, freedom of money and financial transaction would be a revolution if you could add that to the Bill of Rights. Then you really have a revolution. My wife lives in Uganda, but I don't really care about the 10% savings on West. That's not a revolution. That's some technological innovation. Come on, be honest. Right, you see a lot of tech stuff here. That's why I wanted to kind of clean up with some personal stories about fear and how this will change who we are. It's very important to change who we are to be a revolution. You know, I don't know.
Yes? One question here. Come on, stand up.
What's the scariest thing you've done?
The scariest moment of my life was actually not far from, actually it was down in Namibia. And I was in a tent. We were driving around like idiots. I don't like reading before I go somewhere. And this is where I actually got a lot of my wildlife training was in Namibia. But I was being a complete idiot. We drive up at night. It was late. And there's a beautifully mowed lawn. I'm like, wow, ideal. Laid up our tents. And it was right next to a nice little river. It just couldn't have looked more idyllic, right? Of course, it wasn't near a town or anything, but it's like someone came here and mowed this. So, middle of the night, I do actually have to pee every night. I think all my stories revolve around that. I get up to pee, right? And my buddy's in another tent. He's like, dude, look at the bush baby. I was like, oh my God, look at that beautiful bush baby. It's like the moonlight was hitting the bush baby's eyes. And he was like, oh, I'm a bush baby, right? And so I'm looking at the bush baby, and behind me I hear, does anybody know what's coming at me? I'll give you a hint. He's mowing the lawn. I look back over at our Land Rover. I'm like, I didn't remember that rock bigger than the Land Rover behind the Land Rover. What is that rock? I don't know. I'm like, bush babies. I'm a naturalist. Bush babies are beautiful. I turn around and that rock has moved. And it's a hippopotamus. And the hippopotamus is there, and the water is there, and my buddy's in the tent back there going, James, don't fucking move. Don't fucking move. I shiver, I cry at movies. I'm like, they kill more humans in Africa than lions and everybody else put together. You don't want to be between them and the water. Especially if they're on land, they'll kill you. And they only come on land at night. Boom! And I ran out of there as fast as I could, every body shaking, right? That was the most, yeah, that was just pure stupidity, which is what you do when you travel. And it's the best stories you have, right? You talk to some old dude. What's he going to do? Tell you, oh, the best time I had was when I was in the library studying. No, old dude is like, when I was at war and they were bombing us, and I made the best friends at war. Because fear is bonding. Fear is powerful. We see that with the Bitcoin community, right? We're pretending that the prices up and down don't bother us. Bothers us, but I ain't selling. Drives me crazy, but I'm not selling. I won't sell one of those things. This is my surfboard when I get old, right? This is everything I love to do. So, thanks for a fun question.
Anybody else? Art, come on.
Well, I guess flying is kind of boring now and safe, and if you don't count the TSA. So, so how will this fear and excitement, do you think, will be sustained over time?
I actually had something prepared on that, and it's really beautiful because I did teach high school, but my high school students have gotten a bit older. But I'm Facebook friends with them, which is the most beautiful thing. You can actually just go check out your old high school students, right? Smoking bongs, doing all, you know, they basically put it all out there. And I talk about this in my transparency video. Like George Orwell in 1984 is like, everybody wants to hide, no one wants to give out their information. The opposite has happened. Everybody wants to give everything, right? So I actually just send out messages to everybody like, oh, check out Bitcoin, don't sleep on Bitcoin, blah, blah, Bitcoin. Nadia Agbor writes me back, James, what's this Bitcoin stuff? Don't say anything. Set up a wallet, I'll send you some Bitcoin. I sent her $4. So she gets into it. She's like, you know, James, I'm at parties, and I'm hearing about Bitcoin all the time. That's great. I'm hearing about Bitcoin, right? I'm like, yeah. So we Skype, and we talk about it, and she goes, you know what I realized, though? It's so exciting right now. You go to a party, you talk about Bitcoin. It's so exciting. It's awesome. And she's young, right? She's 21. She's like, but you know what's going to happen? In 5 years, they'll get all that shit figured out. It'll be so boring again. It'll just be regular stuff. I'm tired of using my Bitcoin wallet. I really feel that might be it. We might be looking for our next Gabon. We might be looking for our next forest as the rest of the world who is afraid of fear will start to come in. But I really love the fact that we get to climb on the plane with Orville Wright, right? And the Wright brothers and actually have this fun. I hope these years don't end. You know, everyone else is like, when we get this, when we get that. I wish, you know, Laszlo Hanyeks was emailing me right now saying he wanted to buy a pizza. I'd send him 2 pizzas too. Pizza Hut. Put sausage on there. So it's just a fun, fun time, and I think we need to appreciate that, and it's a rare opportunity that little people like me, I'm playing with house money, I'll admit, right? I got in, I'm doing okay. So it's really exciting to be able to stand here and talk to people and the rest of eternity. But it's because the SEC is poorly designed, right? And actually, this point is actually another one I wanted to make, which is cars do have regulations. Cars do transmit things. But the expense of regulation is not on the car owner. Government just takes it, right? You have this freedom to transportation. It's not one of your Bill of Rights, but we accept it as a freedom. But stop signs are paid for by the government. Stop lights, highway police, all that stuff. But you can, for 50 bucks, buy the crappiest car on Craigslist. For another 50 bucks, you can slap a license plate on it, and you can transmit all the crazy stuff you want around the world. It's not super regulated because the regulation of automobiles is eaten by the government. If you put it down on the individual car owner or the individual car dealer, the price of stop signs and highway patrol and all that, well, you don't have cars, right? You have something maybe a couple rich people can use, and that is kind of the banking industry, and that is kind of the Peter Thiel. Oh, I'm rambling, but if you see my videos, none of them are shorter than 24 minutes, so I talk. My buddy's like, when are you going to do the 3-minute video? I don't watch your shit. Like, my wife doesn't either, but someone does.
All right, any other questions? All right.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this couple days. Thanks, everyone, for coming out.